Blessed morning, collective. Whew. There's a lot of guilt and shame floating around. That's what's being felt in the lower abdomen area, kind of in between the sacral chakra and the solar plexus. It's just, it hit me like a literal punch to the gut this morning. Almost felt like it knocked the wind out of me. And that is sort of the sensation. It is the wind being knocked out of ego. It's taking a sucker punch. It's taking a blow. Ego is taking a blow. That is everything that's happening. I mean, ego is diminishing. It's dissolving. It is fading away, and it is perceiving its own death and demise, which actually itself is just a transition into a sublimed state. But it is perceiving the death of itself, and it's fighting it tooth and nail. And there's a lot of anger directed towards itself. All judgment is self-judgment, but this is very clearly self-judgment. It's the internalized version, the internalized experience of it. And I want to pull on it. I'm going to pull on this energy. Some more things are happening this week in my life experience, and I will be traveling somewhere. Hopefully I will have the time and space to continue pulling some readings while I'm there. I'll be gone for about a week, but I intend to continue expressing myself, because why would that stop? But this, I don't know why this feels so critical, and I perceive that as a part of ego's perception. Ego feels that something is critical, something is urgent, something is dire. There is a dire need. There is something that must be done, something very serious, some heavy matter. It feels that everything matters. It is the mind and the mind created self that adds matter to things, that makes them dense in both appearance and experience by the perception that they matter. It invests reality. It adds weight to things. Sometimes those things are physical forms, and sometimes they're emotional forms or thought forms, psychological forms. None of that matters. Nothing really matters, actually, in actuality. It is the mind that adds matter to things, and it cares about things. There's a lot of caring. It came to me today, again, just how much we give power away. How all of Western society, most certainly, but much of modern society in general, is focused on trying to control other people, trying to control, in particular, their emotional response or perception. Their perception of you, their emotional response to you at the base level. At higher levels, it becomes, what is their emotional response and perception of reality itself, the events that are occurring. Anything we try to control controls us. And so when you are trying to enslave, you become enslaved. When you are trying to manipulate and control the perception of others, whether it's of you or anything else, their perception controls you. Your experience of life is now secondary and enslaved by their experience, and vice versa, until somebody says, no more. You feel and you believe and you experience however you choose. It has no effect on me. It doesn't matter. I can see that all of this is the game of ego. All of it is illusion. None of this fucking matters. What anybody thinks of me, what anybody thinks of anything. First of all, it's thinking. It's a concept. Thinking is not knowing. Knowing about is not knowing. The knowing about something is not the experience of that thing, which is the only thing that can impart true knowledge. There are so many people who think to know themselves is to know about the self, know all of these details, these facts of a history, a past, this narrative, this story, the conceptual self. That's not the real self, and it stands in the way of knowing the self. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. I feel it deeply. This is not to judge or diminish anyone. Only ego experiences that. And everything truly is as it should be. This is the course. This is the self-destruction of ego. It has to get a little mad, more than a little mad, at itself. It has to witness its own dysfunction and insanity to be pushed into surrender, pushed into trying anything else. It's tried everything else. It has tried every which way to control, to stay in power. That is the grandest delusion of all, that power involves control over. True power is the complete release of control. It is the surrender of control. And when we surrender the control of others' emotions and perception of us, which this whole society has been built upon, so ego has a very strong identification with this. It is powerfully attached to this idea of itself, that myself is what others think of me. Ooh, and so to even contradict that concept, that idea, ego immediately fights back and says, no, 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 no. No, please don't release this. Nothing is coincidence. This is a reflection of the energy in as much as anything else. Ego says, no, no. Don't do that. Don't stop caring what other people think of you. No, please, because then I would lose my identity. And that, because I am identified with it as myself, it feels like death. And so I will literally fight that tooth and nail. It is perceived as life-threatening. And then we have this crippling anxiety and shame and guilt and all of this stuff that is only the result of giving that power away to someone else, the power to feel good. You have complete control over your experience. What that means is not control over the conditions, but your perception. It is your perception that dictates your experience of the conditions. So when you release control of what many would call the experience, you release control over the conditions, all of them, the perception of others, physical situations, the movements of ego and the mind, the emotional reactions that are the result of that. When you just release control over any of that and say, it doesn't matter, it is what it is, it does not matter, then you're free. Then you are truly liberated. Then you are in power. You are in control of the one thing that even matters and that you can be in control of, which is your perception of what is. It's your perception that defines your experience. When your perception of what is that it simply is, that there is nothing serious going on, nothing matters, nothing, no harm can befall you, then that is your experience. And you experience, you know directly by the experience of it, by the feeling of it, tremendous peace. Peace and satisfaction and joy that is unconditional, untouched by anything. It simply is. So let's pull some cards, because that's what I feel like doing. And it's going to be the animals today. Temperance at the bottom of this deck. I'm not sure what the astrological aspects are doing, other than we definitely have Venus in Leo having faced, I believe, yesterday. The energy is still present. That square with Jupiter in Taurus. That's a bumping up against the borders of ego. It's trying to expand it, it's trying to dissolve it, trying to release it, trying to show it, look, it is your own rigidity and vicious clinging to this identity, which is unhappy, which is based on unhappiness, disempowerment, all of these things, suffering, resistance, separation. That's what the egoic identity is based on. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? The energy is asking. Does it feel good? Forget anything else about why you're doing this. Does it feel good? Does it feel, and I mean truly good, not ego good, because that's what we've been doing. We've been pursuing ego's definition of good feeling, which is tiny. It is minuscule. It's flat. It is paltry in comparison to what true good feeling is. That's what Jupiter is asking right now. But does it really feel good? No shame, no judgment involved. Does that feel good? It's going to keep pointing back to the same question. Does this feel good? If it doesn't feel good, why are you doing it? If it doesn't feel truly at the soul level nourishing, enriching, fulfilling in a way that is not able to be contradicted or diminished by anything else, it is self-satisfied, it's self-sustaining, even in the face of apparent contradiction, it carries on. It's the kind of good that comes from the soul, from the heart. It just feels right. It just feels good. So if it doesn't, why are we doing it? Just that, plain and simple. Let's put it on the table as clearly, cleanly, obviously as possible. Why would you continue to do something that did not feel good in a true, lasting way? Out of habit, out of unconsciousness, unawareness. That's it. Pattern of the ego, enslavement of the mind. Nobody suffers consciously. Nobody suffers on purpose. Once you introduce consciousness and intention into it, the suffering releases. Sure, pain can still be there, contrast still there, absolutely. But the suffering is born from the resistance to what is, and resistance only exists in unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is the natural result of identification with the mind and the mind-made self, being the ego. Once you stop that identification, you break that whole chain. It all starts to fall apart. That's all it takes. Becoming aware, I've been identified with the mind-made self. It is the mind-made self that generates judgment, and so resistance, and so suffering. Once you introduce just awareness of that present moment awareness as it is happening, you have become conscious, and no more suffering can be created. You will still experience the sensations of ego, and having been identified with it for a long time, it's likely that it will drag you back in to some extent. That's okay. That is okay. It will never have the same power over you because you have seen through this illusion. You've seen it once, you can see it again. You got off this train once, you can get off this train again, and again, and again, and again. As many times as it takes until eventually you find yourself on that train less and less often. Sometimes it still happens, and you go, oh, I see this. I'm back on this train. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen this. The second you see it, you're off again. You're watching it. And the longer you spend off that train, the less time you are fueling it, the less fuel it has, the more quickly that momentum is just going to dissipate. That's all it is. It just has momentum. It's been fed for a long time. It's been powered up. It's been fueled for a long time. Now that you stop fueling it, it's still got some residual momentum to roll along, to chug along, but you're not feeding it anymore. And even if you find yourself feeding it for a moment or two, that's not enough. You've tipped the balance. You are feeding it less than you are. So eventually it will run out of steam. And that's all it takes. Consciousness is awareness. Awareness is surrendered acceptance, when you are in that state, you're not generating any resistance. You're witnessing the ego doing everything the ego does, but it doesn't matter. It has no more weight to it. It's just not important. It's allowed to be exactly as it is, whatever it is, in any given moment. Everything just is. You now have control. You have regained control by liberating your consciousness from identification with mind and form. You've regained control over your experience by control over your perception. And you regain that control by releasing all control over the conditions of the experience itself. Suffice to say, I have ranted enough. Temperance. What's underneath that? The Fool. Yellow and orange I am drawn to, specifically the solar plexus and sacral chakra. Something is hitting home. It's making sense that this isn't going to just change on its own. That continuing down this path with this momentum we have built up is going to keep us moving this direction. We don't necessarily have to change the course of this train. We just get off this train. But there's an understanding here that something needs to be done. There must be some action taken. It doesn't have to be a physical action. An internal action is far more powerful. The action of consciousness, of separating that sense of self from the mind-made version, from regaining awareness, becoming awake. That's really the only step. That's the only thing to do. That is the one step. This is a journey of one step. And taking that one step again and again. You see that this journey doesn't actually even go anywhere. It's just a journey back into the now moment, continuously. The mind tries to drag us away from it. We take the one step, which is the step of awareness, and so disidentification with the mind, and we return to the now. That is the whole journey. That one step, that one singular step, you can only ever take one step at a time anyway. This is the one step that we repeat, and the practice of this is the refinement of this step until it becomes something masterful, until we have mastered this step. It's the only step that exists. Look at all of this, orange and yellow. Yeah, it wants to come out. And there's the new path. Love it. 4 of Wands, 6 of Pentacles, and bookending everything because I knew it was in here. We are not going to get rid of this card. Is the World. The World bookending Temperance. This is a change that cannot be avoided. Something that cannot be unseen. It's time to flow with the energy in a new way. It's time to do this differently. If that results in some physical action, fine. That's perfectly fine. The physical action will arise naturally from the state of surrender. That's the choice. That's the only action that's ever needed to take. Surrender to what is. The bringing of awareness to what is, which is the same thing. The arising of consciousness, same thing. The disidentification with the mind, same thing. It's time to experience feeling in a new way. Certainly, it's time to allow feeling to flow. It's time to put the focus on feeling versus thinking, feeling versus understanding. All of the true wisdom comes from feeling. That's how it works. The feeling is the direct experience. It's the actual touching of the thing. It's not the concept. It's not the idea. We have been trapped in this mental realm for so long, enslaved by the mind, so that we've reduced all of experience to a concept. Even as we're experiencing it, we're not even really present. We're not even really there. We're not consciously aware of what's happening because it's all It's all mind. It's this continuous stream of mental chatter. It's interesting to me how stream of consciousness has been taken over by mind. Stream of consciousness has become the stream of mental chatter, which is actually unconscious. The stream of consciousness that is the true stream is the stream of the continuous experience of being. That which is actually wordless, is without definition. That's the stream of consciousness, the stream of life force, of the experience of the isness, the being of the self. That's stream of consciousness. This other concept, mind-made concept of stream of consciousness, of course, is mind-focused because it's mind-made, and the mind thinks that it is the self. That's where ego comes from. It's time to do something differently. Can I just put it that way? There's the Five of Pentacles. It's very sad. All of the whatever meanings about the, and look, this just came off with it. As I was trying to pull it back. The Four of Cups. We have rejected the self. We have left the self, the true self, and true desire out of the equation entirely. It directs me back to that again. Does this feel good? Is this actually what you want? Is this at the soul level satisfying to you? Whether or not anyone is making that conscious delineation between an egoic desire and a soul desire, there is an awareness that there's some sort of difference in here. There is some sort of difference that we can feel between the shallow ego craving, which is very weak and very sad and very diminished and feels icky. You can feel that manipulative exchange of energy. An egoic craving is bottomless, and it has to do with manipulating. It's control-based, it's fear-based. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't feel good. For a long time, because the heart chakra was closed, we weren't aware, we weren't in touch with that sensation of how icky following the ego actually feels. It doesn't feel good. But if the heart is closed, you have tremendously diminished feeling and diminished interaction with the guidance of the soul. For a long time, we've been able to just say, well, this is the only feeling that I have. So I guess this is the extent of happiness. This is the extent of good feeling. We hadn't experienced soul level satisfaction. And so the mind believed, had convinced us that this egoic happiness, whatever, that mental version, the idea of it, which again is tiny, it is minuscule, that was the only version. Now that the heart chakra is being opened by the energy, we have access to this deeper dimension of being and of experience that is profoundly satisfying. Oh, tuned in, tapped in, turned the fuck on. That's what the soul is. That's what the soul feels. This dimension of experience of being is delicious. You bask in it. Bottomless peace, bottomless satisfaction, joy, pleasure, bottomless mimosas. It's just this infinite depth of pleasurable experience that is accessed by the soul and the embodiment of the soul. So this is being realized in some capacity. Whether or not it's consciously realized, this is something that transcends the mind. It is something that the mind does not make sense of. And so it fights it. It goes, well, that doesn't make sense. Why does this feel so good and that feels so terrible when on paper, success, wealth, status, all of that is determinant of happiness? No, it's not. It's determinant of ego's inflation. It's determinant of ego's sense of its own solidity, its own kind of gorilla chest banging strength, which is actually weakness, which is actually frailty. And the soul knows that, the consciousness knows that and feels that and goes, ew, that doesn't feel good. I don't like that. No, thank you. At some level, this is getting through. I now have a cat in the way of the cards, so we're gonna just shift slightly. Thank you for your presence, my boy. His name is Jonah, for anyone that has asked, and he is the familiar. So let's pull on this. Somehow it's making sense that at least what we're doing, what we've been doing, following the mind, following the ego, following this path that we're on, doesn't feel good. And at some level, I feel it's being recognized that it has to do with the perception of others. And our obsession with this, that we are giving away all of our power to feel good to other people and what they think about us. How is that relevant to anything? Why does that matter? At a broader level, we give away all our power to feel good to conditions. That's just one of the conditions. And that's just, it's icky. Does any of that feel good anyway? Why are we doing that? Why are we putting conditions on joyful experience? Why are we limiting our pleasurable experience of existence? Why? Six Pentacles, what's fueling that? The Tower. It feels icky. It feels icky, and it's time to cut this off. It's time to cut it out. It's just a no more. It's a breaking point. No more. No more giving to this. No more doing this. No more behaving in this way. No more putting things so far out of balance, because that's all this behavior does. Following the ego, trying to manipulate the flow of energy, puts you in resistance to it. That resistance puts the energy out of balance. That out of balance energy is what's called karma, and it doesn't feel good. It does not feel good. It's time for things to turn around. It's time to stop. I just get a stop. This is... It's looking at the mind. Yeah, no, I never flipped this card back around. This Ten of Wands. Tremendous guilt here with the Lovers underneath. Ten of Cups, King of Cups. It's time to stop, collaborate, and listen. It's time to feel. And feeling is not thinking. Thinking is not feeling. You can only do one or the other at a time. The emotion is breaking through. The soul energy is breaking through. It's getting through. Even as the mind is still active, the soul energy is rising, feminine energy, rising to the extent that it is overpowering the mind. It's going to continue doing this. And so even if something doesn't make sense to the mind, and even as the mind is still trying to figure it out, the soul is winning. The soul is speaking more loudly and saying, look, I don't care that you don't get it. It doesn't matter that you don't get it. You get it. You get this. You can feel it. You get it. This doesn't feel good. Why are you still doing it? Why? It's not going to stop asking that question. Why are you still putting up these walls against happiness? Why are you letting other people control your experience by giving away your power to feel, by saying that anything makes you feel? Why? Does that feel good? Does it feel good to do that? Because you have that power. You're choosing to give that away. Does it feel good? This is sticky, icky energy. It's a little bit acrid. It's kind of like bile. I don't know. It's just the way it feels. It's like heartburn. Tell me about it. What the hell is going on? Pulling on the soulmate cycle currently. This is all in the tracking of the ascension of consciousness. And a very big part of that is the dissolution of ego, which means it needs to see that it's standing in its own way. Knight of Cups, overall energy. What's fueling that? The Empress. Come on. Oh, we want to feel good. Look, Empress energy, feminine energy, soul energy, feels good. It feels good. It feels warm, it's inviting, it's receptive, it's soft, it's stable, it's rooted and solid, but in a very comforting kind of way. It feels good, and we want that. That is what we want. That is what everything is screaming for. So what's in the energy of the connection? That 10 of Wands. There's the guilt. There is the guilt, the worry. There's obsession here too. But it's too much. It's too heavy. Especially, I mean, it's just looking at this going, oh, that's so nice. This is so not nice. What feels good? Does this feel good? Then why? Why are you carrying around this burden, this pile of sticks? Why? When you could just drop it and go towards the Empress. Look at that. 8 of Pentacles underneath. I thought it was a 9 of Cups, actually. There's no escaping this. There is no everything. All roads lead to the Empress. Everything leads back to listening to the soul, listening to the feminine energy, being naturally drawn to it, attracted to it. It is feminine energy that is attractive. That's how it works. It's not masculine energy that attracts. Feminine energy attracts. Oh, what's in the 3D? That 4 of Swords comes back. It's a combination of the more we do nothing, the more this pressure builds. But the more the pressure builds, the more it actually shuts down the brain. See, it all works in tandem. The universe is brilliant. It knows exactly how this plays out. It knows exactly what buttons to press to trigger what cycles to create this kind of change. Why? Because it put those buttons there. It put those triggers there. It created the whole thing. It knows it back to front. So the resistance of the mind creates the pressure. The pressure in turn wraps around and overwhelms the mind and has the ultimate result of shutting it down. And all of it just points to this. You experience enough resistance, enough suffering, and the ego starts to crack. It starts to collapse in on itself because it cannot handle the suffering that it has generated. There's also a lot of these limit situations. This is the limit situation energy of cannot take this, unacceptable, can't stand it, can't deal with it. The result of that is you have this break. You have a dissociative break. Psychosis is so beautiful. It's so important in the process of awakening to the truth of yourself. That psychosis is a break with delusional reality. It's only called by psychosis by those continuing to experience and prescribe to the delusion. That's it. It's just an acceptable delusion. So to everybody inside the delusion, y'all crazy. Y'all some crazy motherfuckers. Psychotic. You have experienced a break with reality. The reality you've experienced a break with is not real. It's not the real reality. You're actually awakening to the true thing. I could rant on that for a while. What's in the soul position? Oh, 8 of Cups. The soul is out the door. The soul is, bye Felicia. I'm going over here. The soul has moved. The energy has already moved. It's the mind, the masculine energy of the mind that is just sort of frozen in place. But the longer it stays frozen, the more this tension again builds up. It's like the rubber band. The more it's holding here and the soul is going, well, I'm just going to keep moving this direction. Eventually, it can't take it. It cannot take it anymore. It breaks. The mind breaks. When the mind breaks, the soul is allowed to take over and everything just rushes in. You release resistance. You're swept up by that flow. Again, energy always takes the path of least resistance. The energy of the universe, which is your soul, ultimately, it is yourself, is always trying to push you along, sweep you along into alignment, into balance, which all feels good, which allows things to flow smoothly through your experience and allows the whole thing to be a much more pleasant and comfortable ride. It's only ever the balling up and resistance against it, which is the result of the mind and identification with it, that stops your experience from being so smooth. But when you've balled up enough resistance and you go, I can't take it anymore, you break. In that split second of releasing resistance, everything floods in and you're sucked in. You're sucked into the vortex, whatever you want to call it. The soul is putting greater distance between itself and the mind. Feminine energy increasing the gap between itself and masculine, because that increases the pull. It increases the pressure. Again, it's if you're going to sit there and do nothing, I'm going to go. I'm going to go over here where I want to go and where it feels good. And eventually you will follow. Eventually you'll come with me. I'm not going with you. The soul, the highest self, will never follow the mind into its path of delusion and suffering. And what a very good thing that is. What's the hidden energy here? Two of Wands. Yeah. They're gonna go. You're gonna go. The intention is already there. This all works in tandem. The more that the mind resists, the more the pressure builds, the more it actually is setting the intention and manifesting the path forward, the breakthrough, the release. It happens. The more that masculine energy resists coming together, moving towards the feminine, the more it ensures that happening. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about energy. But this is what's happening. This energy comes to balance. There is just, it is built into the universe that it functions this way. I hope that was on camera. That was loud. I think that's a J. Yeah. Haven't had a J visit quite some time. It's emphatic. It's just, this happens. I believe J's are intended to bring messages of someone thinking of you. There's all kinds of meanings. I mean, it's just the presence of energy, the presence of spirit that's in agreement with this in some form, which is really beautiful. Just saying, yeah, this happens. One way or another, masculine energy moves towards feminine energy, because the feminine energy is disappearing over the hills. It's just a dot in the distance now, and that's creating a whole world of hurt for masculine. It's just sitting there going, and the more it does that, the more this pressure builds. Eventually, it just overwhelms. It takes over the mind. The ego, the mind, collapses. And the second that happens and the resistance is released, the second there is this space, this dissociative break, because the suffering, the burden is too great. We cannot take it anymore. The soul energy just, it rushes in, it sweeps everything along. All right, what's in the final outcome position? Need I say more? This is, I am never pulling these readings. This is not a person or a personality doing this. This is just energy flowing. This is the universe saying, justice. Yeah, this happens. Energy comes to balance. These cats have a conversation. They come together. Justice will be served. That's it. That is it. The Empress, the feminine energy, will be restored her throne. Yeah. Now we have a dog braying. I love it. Okay, well, let's clarify. Why not? Why not clarify some of this? Oh, my poor little satchel. Guess I'll get another one at some point. What do we have here? The Lovers. Healing. Balanced energy is healing. I mean, it feels good. Restoring energy to balance, yeah, it feels good. It feels really nice. There is the world again, I'm telling you. This card is not going away. This is unstoppable. This is divine. This is the universe saying, I am bringing the energy to balance. Why? Because it's desired. Because it is what I want, and we are one. It's what you want. You requested it. You, as myself, in this manifested reality, requested this. Now it happens. That's the way it works. Also, all karmic debts are paid. The natural order is restored. That's why it's the natural order. It just takes over. It doesn't matter what kind of resistance is applied. It doesn't matter what we fight. This comes back around and around and around and around. 6 of Cups, 4 of Wands, 10 of Cups. Until you let it in. I'm not talking about a specific outcome or situation. It's just energy, but it is energy that has been brought back around and around. The opportunity to make this new choice, to do things differently, to head down. Yeah, there's the choice. Literally, 7 of Cups, Ace of Wands. To make this new choice, to move towards genuine happiness and away from the bullshit, away from the made-up version, the ego version, the version that doesn't really feel good, and that actually is based on the giving away of power. It's based on the perception of others. This is that picture on Facebook or wherever it is of look how happy we are and the perfect happy family. But if that picture doesn't get enough likes, somebody's crushed. Somebody's not happy. How is that happiness? Does that feel good? Does that feel good? Again, asks the soul. Does it feel good to have your happiness, to have your sense of self-worth based on what other people think of you? Does that feel good? Does it feel good to post all these pictures on social media? Does it feel good to be taking those pictures instead of living in the moment? Continuously surrendering your power over your experience and therefore your satisfaction to the perception of others. You're gonna base your perception off other people's perception? You're gonna put limitations and conditions upon your good feeling? Your experience of reality? It's time for that to stop. Does it feel good? And if it doesn't, why are you doing it? Stop. Stop it. Get some help. That's what the universe is here to do. Tell me about this 10 of Wands. This 10 of Wands, this big, this crushing guilt. It's time to just say, fuck it. Say, fuck it, and follow the soul. The masculine energy can feel that feminine is, again, just gone over the hills. And that's what it needs. That's what we need. We need the feminine energy to keep growing, to keep moving, not to stop, not waiting for anything. Sayonara. I'm gonna keep on trucking. There's something over there that interests me. I'm gonna go check that out. Take it or leave it. You wanna keep being unhappy? Go for it. That's okay. That's fine. Keep doing that. I can't make this shit up. The environmental energy around the 10 of Wands is 10 of Wands. This is heavy. Heavy. It's 20 wands. It's all the wands. Oh, and it's crushing. There is no way out of this except to crumble, except to be destroyed. There's the Five of Pentacles. It's, oh, it feels the departure of feminine energy. It feels that it's getting away. And the further away the feminine energy moves, the more desperately unhappy the mind becomes, the masculine energy becomes. The more desperately unhappy it becomes, the more it fights itself and creates more unhappiness. But it reaches a fever pitch. It reaches this point where it cannot take it anymore. The second that happens, there is a break. There is a dissociative break. The consciousness becomes aware, says, I can't associate with this suffering anymore. This is not my suffering, which is true. That's actually a true statement. That's not your suffering. That is the suffering of mind and ego. That is self-created. When you no longer are identified with the mind, that's no longer your suffering, and it no longer matters. And now you're not generating any more suffering. You're not pushing against what is. You have surrendered to an internal state, an internal condition. Your acceptance of what is allows it to be as it is, allows the soul energy to rise, allows things to naturally return to balance, which they will, they are. What's on top? Cannot escape it. It's the world. This happens. This breaks. This cycle is meant to break you. The world, with the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger, is saying, I will break you. I will break your mind. It's time for this to fall apart. It uses the resistance of the mind against itself because it knows that resistance cannot continue forever. It will reach a breaking point. When that happens and the mind shuts down, it's overpowered, the soul energy floods in, everything floods in, the energy starts to balance itself, you're swept up. What's red with the world? Yeah, it just takes you new places. Once you stop fighting the current, it sweeps you along at breakneck speeds, and you just end up somewhere else in the blink of an eye. You close your eyes for what you think is just a moment. Oh, I'm just gonna rest. I'm so tired of carrying this burden and fighting against this. I just gonna sleep for a second, and then in an instant, you're somewhere else. Somewhere totally other. The burden is transformed. It's gone because you released resistance. You released resistance because you couldn't keep it up anymore. The universe knows. It knows. It's you. It created this game. You're not gonna beat the universe at the game it created. That's not how it works. You want to win. You are the universe. The universe wants you to win. It constructed this game for you to win. There's no way not to win. Which means there's no way not to give in to the universe. Had a card fall out. It is the Seven of Wands. There is no resistance to this. There's no way. It doesn't matter how hard you try to beat this back. This healing happens. This is healing through truth. It's also, in this instance, I feel it as the diminishment of mind, the diminishment of the ego-made self. Truth doesn't live in the mind. It's full of illusion. It is full of lies and deceit. When the mind starts to see that in itself, it becomes viciously unhappy with itself and begins this process of self-destruction. It starts to see that it is its own worst enemy. It is what's standing in its way. And then naturally, because of continued identification as the mind, with the mind as self, it starts to judge itself. That pressure increases until it's so unhappy with itself that it can't take it anymore, and it breaks. It dissociates from itself and discovers that was never itself. This was never myself. The mind was never myself. It's all made up. There's a whole other self here that is the genuine article, the real deal. And this genuine article casts no judgment, holds no resistance or attachment, is pure being, is pure awareness, simply accepting and experiencing what is as being, experiencing the isness of everything, including the mind. Now I see clearly, I am not the mind. The mind is another thing. The mind is a thing. It is a part of this illusion. It's not myself. And I don't have to listen to it. There's that Knight of Cups from the overall energy. I can flow around it. I can flow around this resistance. You don't have to stop the mind from doing anything. Resistance lives in the mind. You don't have to stop that resistance from being generated. You can dissociate from the mind, which is not you, and then you're not the one feeling or adding to that resistance. You're flowing around it. You are accepting it. You are transmuting it by your awareness of it. It shifts from resistance to release. By your bringing the light of your consciousness to that darkness, it is transformed. Tell me about this Eight of Cups here. Let the ego feel what it feels. Let the mind judge and characterize and think. Witness it. Notice it. Don't claim it as yours. It's not you and it's not yours. When you don't claim it as yours, you're not trying to control it. When you're not trying to control it, it can't control you. Ow. Please stop. Tell me about the Eight of Cups. Okay, thank you. That's quite enough, please. It's gonna keep biting me. Three of Wands. Yeah, the soul has moved on. The soul has moved on. New horizons. I'm going over there. That looks nice. I'm going over there. Quickly. Nothing's stopping me. I am on a bullet train headed over these mountains. Not sitting in this. So follow or don't follow. That's up to you. The Magician. How do I even express this? It's pushing the masculine energy into just breaking. Just split second puff of smoke. This is heavily karmically related. Again, karma is just imbalanced energy. The further away the feminine energy moves, and the more stuck the masculine energy is, the more it puts things out of balance internally. The more tension is generated. The more tension is generated, the stronger that snapback is. It creates this pressure. It's all designed to help this energy come to balance in the way of a slingshot. Create so much tension, so much pressure that in a split second of this burden, the moment this burden becomes too much, and it will, there's no time in the energy. I'm not saying when or how, but it will, because that's what everything is working towards. Heart chakras being opened for this purpose, so that we can't ignore these feelings anymore. We can't pretend this suffering isn't here. We can't run from it. We can't escape it. We can't drown it in drugs or alcohol or work or relationships. It's not working. The suffering continues. None of those things are assuaging it anymore. The further away the soul moves, the more this pressure builds. Eventually it snaps, and all of that energy comes to balance. in one fell swoop. Why is the Magician here? Queen of Wands. The walls come crumbling down. All of the walls. I don't know why I'm hearing Humpty Dumpty in my head. This shell, the shell of ego, the shell of pretense, is the reason, again, for this tension, for this resistance, for the fighting off of feminine energy, of emotion and soul. Eventually, that burden becomes too heavy, and ego cracks. There is a schism, there is a separation that takes place between the self, between consciousness, and the mind-made self. It is the mind-made self that puts up these walls, again, that puts up this fence of pretense, that cares what other people think, that gives away all of its power to feel to other people and their perception. That doesn't feel good. That creates a tremendous burden. Eventually, that breaks you. It breaks the mind. And you stop doing it because it just sucks so much. I don't have eloquent words for this. It's just a fuck it. I cannot take this anymore. It's a fuck. It's a screaming into the void kind of energy. This 10 of Wands weighs 10,000 pounds. I'm telling you, the burden of keeping up this appearance, the reputation, the things attached to my name and what people think of me, and there's business. There's a lot of business attached to this too, of like, I have this reputation, this standing in some sort of community. That's just so fucking false and unsatisfying. You get stuck in these identities that are based on what other people think. You construct this image of yourself, and then in the egoic clinging to that, you're trapped. Your soul can't express. You can't follow the good feeling impulse, because what would other people think? Because that doesn't fit my image. That doesn't fit my brand. Fucking crock of shit, man. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm really not sorry. This is the society we have constructed. Is it any wonder that everyone is so miserable? Caring what other people think, building a whole identity, a livelihood off of this tiny momentary version of self, this idea of self, and then God forbid we expand. God forbid we ever experience another expression that could be even remotely different, much less contradictory to that. Oh, and the soul is just saying, yeah, I'm not a part of this. Peace out, motherfucker, because I'm not limited. That's not me. That's not my identity. This brand, this image that you've constructed, that ain't me. Good job, ego, writing that story, writing that character role. Well done. That's not me. That's... Oh, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. It feels icky. It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. It is time for ego to face that blow, to be diminished, to lose face, to lose this identity entirely, to have it removed, to have it ripped away, to face that blow of the limit situation of this world that was constructed by ego, collapsing, crumbling, coming to a final end. So there is nothing more for ego to cling to, and it must accept its own demise. The suffering of this resistance is too great. Oh, I see that blue jay now. Oh, it's a big one. Tell me about this Two of Wands. Tell me about the Two of Wands. Why am I shuffling so much? There we go. Oh, I just dropped a whole bunch of cards, so. What did we just say? It's time for ego to die. It's time for this burden, this identification, this identity that we've created that's a bunch of bullshit. It's all fakery and pretense, and look at what I have and what I can do. It's time for it to die. Death. It's time for that to go away. For ego to face its own death. For that identity to come to an end. There's too many cards. I don't want all of these cards, but to see that the pretense, the fakery, first of all, it's fake. It's a bunch of bullshit. We're not happy. We're telling people we're happy, and other people believing that we're happy is what, quote unquote, makes us happy. Where is the joy in that? Where? Where in that equation is there actual satisfaction? It's not there, so why are we doing it? Why have we trapped ourselves in this bubble of I don't feel good, I don't like myself, but my entire sense of self-worth is based on other people and what they think of me, and if they like me, and if they like me, then I guess I'm okay with not liking me, or not even really that. It's I still don't like me, but at least other people do. But does that even mean anything? Does that feel good? What the fuck? Stop. Get out of this trap. Get off this ride. Oh. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to leave these cards. No, I'm not. I'm putting them back, but I am going to take what's on top. It's time for this identity of suffering and unhappiness to go away. It's time for it to die. It's time for everybody to stop liking you. I know it sounds like what it sounds, but it's just when this level of identification with mind takes place, it's gotta crumble somehow. It is time for this identity to fall, for this venture to fail. What's on top? The devil. The shadow side in this. Yeah, it's time for this to be revealed. It's time to see this has all been a toxic power play. No self, no authenticity, no joy, no satisfaction has been a part of any of this. This life that we have constructed, this self, this identity, this business, this brand, this image, it's all fake. It is all a load of shit, and it does not feel good, and it's not satisfying. It's not pleasing to us. It's time for that to be revealed, and revealed to everybody. It is time for something to happen that helps us move on, that helps us just take that step. This is the land sinking. If you've been stuck in this position of going, I'm not really happy here, maybe I should move on, this is losing that job. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. I manifested an accident that by all accounts should have ended my life in a physical form, should have ended my physical experience of life. Say that better. I had just gotten a job that I thought was a great job, and then I realized I hated it. It was with a spiritual media publishing company, and I was designing email blasts for them for these retreats. They work with Eckhart Tolle. They work with Brene Brown and all kinds of spiritual and enlightenment, whatever, focused teachers. And I was like, this is perfect. This is where I want to be. And then I got there and I was working there, and it just felt so icky. It felt so false. All of this brand and image and identity, and it wasn't just about the company's image, it was about the people working in the company. They had their own brand, their own image, and it just did not feel good. It did not feel good. But I didn't see a way out. I didn't understand. I was not conscious enough at the time to really recognize what was happening and to understand my own power, and also that I was giving power away. I didn't see a way out, and I had just basically committed to a life of unhappiness. I had just told myself, well, I don't see another way. I guess I will just become one of these corporate drones. I guess this is the way. These people seem to know. They work for a company that's all about spiritual media and enlightenment. I guess they must know. And this really icky, unsatisfactory happiness that doesn't feel happy to me, I guess that's what it is. I guess this is happiness. I guess this is as good as it gets. So I just go with this. And no less than 2 weeks after having that discussion with myself, did I get in an accident, a skateboard accident. I lost my job. The surface disappeared from underneath me. Where I didn't see a way out, the universe said, I got a way out for you. Here, let me take care of that. Let me take care of that, because this isn't the direction you're supposed to go. And this is your time for your mental burden, your mental suffering, to reach a critical point, to reach an apex, so that you're forced to dissociate from it. You're forced to release this identity. I literally lost my identity because I had such a massive concussion that I couldn't remember who I was. I couldn't remember my past. I could not project into a future. The entire identity that I had built was removed in one beautiful fell swoop. And as it started to creep back in, I had to make the conscious decision, as I experienced the tremendous waves of anxiety that the returning of this burdensome identity created within me. I had the conscious experience of saying, whoa, I don't want that. That doesn't feel good. Why am I going to do that? I can just keep being nothing. I can just keep being not that. Whoever this person was that I thought whoever this identity, this past, whatever, it's not mine. And I know it now. I know it's not me, because I have continued existing without this being here. So whatever me is, whatever I am, it's something wholly else. It's not that. Let me just not. Let me just not. It's creating these kinds of situations. That's what this energy is here for. And I will say, best thing that ever happened to me. Absolutely the best experience, manifestation, whatever of my life experience. So incredibly grateful for that. Changed everything. Changed everything. Broke me free of the identification with this mind-made, unhappy concept of self. Ripped away the past. Doesn't exist. That ain't me. Tell me about justice. Why is justice here? Okay, that was quick. Whoa, we're back to the Six of Pentacles. Yeah, it's time for this to come to balance. It doesn't matter. It does not matter how much you resist the universe's debt collectors. Because they're on your side. That's your debt. That you have taken out money against yourself. The universe wants to bring that back into balance. It wants to restore your balance. It's Eight of Pentacles. There's no escaping. There is no escaping. Everything is building towards this and will continue to. It is how this works. The more you run from the debt collectors of the universe, the hotter on your tail they are. And you no longer have a payment plan. It's lump sum. It's all or nothing. You pay it all back in one go. What's on top? Seven of Cups. This will be overwhelmed. Again, it's read with the Seven of Wands and the Worlds to an extent. I don't want to repeat myself. I'm feeling for any other layer of energy. It's time to make a different choice. We'll just go with that. Everything else it's a repeating message of the overwhelm, and that's how this works. The more you resist, the more the tension builds. It's going to build until it breaks. Why is the Seven of Cups here? Strength. Give me one more for strength. The Fool. Yeah, it's helping us to break free. To have this new beginning, to make this new choice where we march forward without fear, because we're no longer identified with the mind and its burden and its suffering and its fear-based mechanisms of control. It's here to help us realize how fear has been ruling everything. Everything. We have been letting fear rule our entire experience of life. Does that feel good? Does it? No? Then stop fucking doing it. Then do something else. Make a different choice. Move into the fear. Whatever the fear is telling you to run away from, go towards that. Check that out. Go see what that's about. The fear is covering up something that's important. Fear is not guidance, but you can use it. You can use it by flipping it on its head. What is it that I feel so afraid of? Let me do that thing. It's only ego that's afraid. Only ego is afraid, perceives threat, a threat of its diminishment or destruction, and it's only ego, which is an illusion, that can experience diminishment or destruction. So let it. There is no risk. You go over there and you find out. And either it plays out in some way that is satisfying to you, or it plays out in some way that is diminishing to ego, and therefore liberating to you. It's satisfying because it's an experience, because you followed the impulse of the soul, regardless of what the mind was saying. You didn't let fear rule you. Do you know how empowering that is? To fly in the face of fear? That is real strength. That is empowering. That feels good. It doesn't feel good to follow fear. It feels good not to listen to it. So why are we listening to it when we could feel good in just doing the opposite, doing anything other than that? Oh, I'm gonna get a final 3 cards. Anything else you want to say, universe? Anything else here that you'd like to leave us with? See how he's calmed down now? Now that we've reached the balanced energy in this little pocket, it's a lot nicer. It feels good. This feels good. I'm so relieved to be here. It feels good. Because I gotta tell you, experiencing the energy of this tension, this icky, especially that Queen of Wands. Oh. But it's all here to transform it. It's all here to show us. Following fear accomplishes nothing. And most of all, it feels shitty. It does not feel good. It is not satisfying. You will never be satisfied following fear. Fear will tell you it's keeping you safe. That's the choosing of security, which is an illusion, over freedom. And it never feels good. You will never be satisfied with that. Choose the freedom. Choose to face the fear. Ace of Pentacles, something that's took a long time. Yeah, there's this death. It's also the death of a very long-standing thing. Something that's been in the way. There's liberation. 9 of Pentacles. Liberated from something that's been standing in our way. What's on top? The Star. Ace of Wands. This new beginning that's been trying to take place. Trying and trying and trying for a long time. It's finally happening. Because of the liberation of something that was in its way. I don't know how else to put it. Something is being removed. It's ego. It is the block of ego that is being removed. But I also feel that that is being assisted by a tremendous physical shift. Something in the physical realm is being removed that is creating this destructive experience. It's creating a destruction of ego. It's increasing the pressure on ego so much that it breaks, that it starts to collapse on itself. That the second that collapse happens, everything else rushes in. Yeah, the Star. Red with, I just am looking at the Star. Red with the 9 of Wands. I couldn't even say the name of that card. It's disappearing. It's disappearing. It's everything that was already said. There is a wall. There is something being removed. Something that has stood in the way of, you can call it destiny, of the balance of energy, of the requested and desired and intended balance of energy, which takes place one way or another, no matter what it does. The universe wins. You win. This is your game for your highest good. The universe makes sure you win this game. I don't want to keep repeating myself. It is essentially the same message, but everything is changing. This is helping stuff to break loose. But in order for stuff to break loose, ego has to not be identified with. I was going to say we have to release the resistance. It's not so much that as releasing identification with the mind where the resistance is held. This is creating dissociation, is the way that I feel it. What a beautiful gift. What an important thing to begin dissociating from ego's delusional perception of self and reality. Then you can know the true self. When you forget the false self, when you break from identification with the false self and its perception of what is, then you start to see clearly and you begin to know yourself by way of direct experience, an experience of yourself as all that is. That's the whole message. There is a lot here. There will continue to be a lot here. It's a lot on purpose. That's the message. It resonates powerfully with me. I do intend that it resonates with you, my beautiful viewer. If so, I would love to know how. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe if you feel so inclined. Just do you. Fuck what anybody else says or thinks. Forget brand or image or reputation. None of that shit matters. None of that shit will make you feel good. It won't. There's no real satisfaction there. There is satisfaction in embodying the authentic self, and the authentic self does not care. It's good. It's good. It knows it's good. It doesn't need any support or validation of that. In fact, the feeling of it is known in giving up any control or care about that. That's liberation. The liberation of your consciousness is the embodiment of yourself. And in that, you will experience true satisfaction, peace, and joy. I've rambled enough. That's all there is. Thank you for your witness. Have a beautiful, magnificent, blessed day, my lovely collective. And do know that always and in all ways, through every vector of time and space, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of you, and nobody has the power to make you feel. But all the same, I think you're pretty cool, and I love you. Take it easy.